Thank you. We will note that correction. We needed a roll call vote, or is it? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. And now we have public comments. Anybody here? All right, there's nobody raising their hand. I'm going to move into action items. Action item A, we've got VRT Board bylaws update.
Madam Chair. Sorry, before we get to that, I just want to make sure to introduce Councilor Dittenberg. It is his first opportunity to be here today, so just want to recognize him. And he is our new board member from City of Caldwell, so I just want to recognize Mike on being here.
Welcome.
You. All right, Madam Mayor, I'm up on this. Jason will bring the presentation up. So in your packet is a copy of updated bylaws. There was both a clean version and a red line version and a memo explaining what the changes were. I'll briefly go through those and talk about why. This is an action item. There is a resolution with it. Once we're done, either with or without changes, approve the resolution, BBD 250016. So the reason we're doing this is that the bylaws have not been updated since the change in structure from executive director to CEO. As we went through it to look for those things, we found some things that were a bit ambiguous and cleaned those up with clarifying language. And then we also made some changes to recognize some practices that have come into being since I've been here in terms of the frequency of meetings of the executive board and the frequency of meetings of the regional advisory council, as well as recommendation to change slightly the structure of the executive board. Next. So here's a list of the changes by article and section. So this first page, in your memo, you'll see a full explanation of all of these. All of the ones on this page are what I believe to be simply clarifying the language that's there, how things should happen, what the process is, and then many of the changes recognizing the CEO rather than the executive director. The more substantive changes next are in this next section. So in Article 3, Section 8, right now, any city that grows over 25,000 is supposed to get 2 representatives on the board, recognizing that with growth, that's a number that's probably below what makes sense in terms of size of the board. We're recommending increasing that to 50,000. In Article 6, Section 1, talks a lot about a bit of reorganization of the executive board, adding the immediate past chair as one of the officers and recognizing that that's the person who has the most immediate knowledge, and being able to utilize that on the office in the officer corps is, I think, really important. Also clarifying that the city of Boise will always have at least one board officer seat, recognizing their contributions to this organization, and then recognizing that all the other central cities will be represented either as officers or somewhere on the executive board. Also changing the number of meetings per year. Right now, the bylaws stipulate that the executive board meets every month. While we will continue to meet every month if needed, we've created a calendar where every 3rd month the executive board is remote. And if we don't have enough business that month, we cancel that meeting. We also have created a calendar where we take 1 month off a year, and that's really for my staff because of the rhythm of meetings through the year. There was never any month when some of the administrative staff had time when they could take time off. And we're still running up against people who've not taken enough of their vacation time. So the 11 months a year is so that we can still have that 1 month off during the year at some point. And then clarifying when the executive board makes recommendations to the full board and when not. And then in Article 6, Section 1, there's also recognition that the executive board is not the full board. And while we still welcome public comments at all times, we are recommending that the public comments be on the agenda for all board meetings, and that in between, we've clarified by adding a section that public comments are always welcome in writing, and identifying the process that we'll use to ensure that those public comments get to the correct decision-making body in a timely way for whatever they're in relationship to. Next. So those are the substantive changes, and I would welcome any discussion.
This is Mayor Debbie, a quick question. Sure. So it was interesting. I did not realize, and I should have probably, that the urban renewal districts, I noticed that Meridian has a seat with the urban renewal district. And I noticed Nampa doesn't. And it just occurred to me that most of our public transit is in the urban renewal district. And where we have a challenge with funding, it may be in our best interest to consider having the urban Nampa's NDC, Nampa's Urban Renewal District, have the option to weigh in. Because our urban renewal district actually is Nampa Caldwell Boulevard all the way out to Treasure Valley Marketplace downtown. So a good portion of where we would be using transit, and where several of our lines are actually in our urban renewal district. So it's just a thought. I was just curious if what the thought is on that. We will be sunsetting our urban renewal district in about 6 years. So it just was a thought.
Thank you, Mayor Kling, and I appreciate that. And I missed that as we went through here, that yours is not one of the urban renewal districts represented. And I'm trying to figure out if we need to change something in the bylaws to allow you to add that or not. And I'm pulling it up right now.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch it in advance.
Did you catch which section that was? Let's see. Section 7, okay.
It's on, in mine, it's on page, I believe it's 148. They're called special members and appointing agencies. So under the special members, we have Boise State, CCDC, Meridian Development Corp., and CWI.
Would I welcome a motion to amend that to add the Nampa Urban Renewal?
Can I just make a couple comments?
Yeah, why don't we do, what I prefer to do is take comments, see if there are additional amendments, and we handle it all at once.
So, and I'd love to get Mayor Kling's feedback on this too. I don't know if a better way to do that, and maybe learning from the legislature, they seem to love that number of 100,000 and picking on those cities of over 100,000. So I don't know if it maybe is a change of that, if for cities that are over 100,000, then the member of their urban renewal is on there, because then that would cover obviously the 3 there. So I'm just thinking about like Caldwell, obviously, because we have an urban renewal as well. We're not to that 100,000 number. So it's like, well, Nampa got one, why didn't Caldwell get one? Caldwell got one, why didn't Middleton get one? Middleton, why didn't they? So maybe rather than choosing cities, it's just that number. There's a threshold like the other areas, and whether it's 100,000 or whatever, that we feel is appropriate, then once you hit that threshold, okay, now you do have a member of your urban renewal that's part of that special district. So maybe that may be a better way to implement it.
Chair, Section 7 is the process to it, to add a board member. And it's like, it's just a simple majority vote of the board. So it could probably happen at any board meeting or this board meeting if people are ready or.
Sure, it's not part of the bylaws. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be part of the bylaw changes. Okay,
Just follow up
Sure.
comment. I can't guarantee NDC would want to do that. I think it's a good point. That it's, if you do have a city, and what is that? Is it 75,000? Is it 100,000? It's just an interesting, I just noticed it and I got to thinking, just candidly for the city of Napa, we're having a really hard time funding public transportation. And it could be that if it's important because it's in our urban renewal district, it would give that body an opportunity to weigh in. It's my only thought, if they so chose to have someone.
why don't we do this then, given Commissioner Nilsson's call out of the process that you could add somebody? We could direct, I'll direct you. Since the urban renewal district isn't here, staff work with you to figure out if they'd be interested, and then we'd entertain that proposal separately following the bylaws as written.
Sound good?
There are other issues in bylaws folks would want to discuss? Alrighty, I will take a motion.
Slide, Jason has the resolution number. There you go.
All right, we have a motion. Second, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I
Aye.
think that was an aye. Opposed? All righty, thanks, and we will do some follow-up with the Nampa Urban Renewal District. Great call out. All right, now we are on to item B. This is delegating authority of the executive board to approve the contract for transit management services.
Good afternoon. This is, starts on page 158 of your packet. It's the Transit Management Services Contract Delegation to the Executive Board. We currently have an active RFP out for the Transit Management Contract Services for Ada and Canyon County. It's due to close at the end of April, but the next board meeting for the full board will not be until August. So we're asking that you delegate it to the Executive Board for them to finalize and negotiate a contract for the CEO and allow them to finalize that contract. For the highlights, we went with SLBFB LLC. They are our consultant. They did a presentation to the full board last year to talk about the differences between the management contract and the operating contract. And based off of the change at the administration and level, we decided to stick with the management contract again to get us through this time. The operations contract would be more of a turnkey operating contract where we would hire a private provider to come in, pay for everything, and then we would do some sort of reimbursement for them to reimburse them for their costs. So we'll continue as a management contract where VRT funds everything and they provide one staffing person at Ada and Canyon County for that service. The request for bid, again, I believe questions are due next, or final proposals are due next week. We'll make a decision the end of April and it'll come back to the executive board, I believe, in June. And then the contract will be executed and it will go into effect on October 1 of this year. And with that, I would take questions.
Any questions for Leslie?
And I just would note that if we don't delegate this to the executive board, we wouldn't be able to make a decision until August. And if we had to wait till then, we wouldn't be able to make the change at the change of the fiscal year, which is much easier time to do it.
All right. I'll take
Motion.
I'll take a motion.
I move that we delegate authority to execute to the executive board to approve the contract for the transit management system. And to approve, I need to approve the resolution, right? VBD 25013.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Ready, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Next up, we have Elaine Clegg discussing the use of expiring formula funds policy 421.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So last year, you'll all remember that we entered into an agreement with your approval in the end that we use some of our formula funds to do some pedestrian improvements in the city of Nampa. Those are improvements that are in the middle of the city where we have service. And those improvements will include both pedestrian crossings, sidewalk gap closures, and bus stop improvements that will serve transit. But instead of being directed by Valley Regional Transit, they'll be directed by the Public Works Department in the city of Nampa. We're using, in Canyon County in particular, we have formula funds that we're not always able to use completely because of the lack of local match. And so in this case, we're using formula funds that were in danger of expiring. Next slide, please, Jason. Sorry. And so during the discussion around that project, the board directed us to bring back a policy under which we would use those formula funds and what criteria we'd follow. So that this policy is that. So the goal of this policy is to expand all our federal funds available to the region to further public transportation. The benefit is that we'll utilize those funds that might otherwise be rescinded to benefit public transportation for the public in VRT's service area. If we allowed those funds to expire or lapse and they were rescinded, then they would either be used in another place in Idaho or they'd leave Idaho altogether. So we think it's to our benefit to utilize these. Next, please. So highlights of the policy, there's a section of definitions just so everyone can be clear who is who and what is what are expiring funds. There's some examples of the kinds of projects we would envision utilizing these funds for under this policy. Those include infrastructure that serves transit user access. That would be very similar to what we did in Nampa with those funds. Purchase of rolling stock for other agencies if they serve our area. So you may all know that we have Fraser Valley Transit, we have Metro Community Services, we have Whitco, we have a number of senior centers who still own their own vans. And so one of the ways that we could utilize these funds would be to assist those agencies in buying rolling stock so that they could serve the members of the public that they serve in our service area. And in fact, I'll be honest with you and tell you we do have a request for such. And if you approve this policy today, the executive board can look for a approval of actually doing that very soon. The third way we've thought of as an example for how these funds might be used is that we could utilize them to build or partner on infrastructure that is serves for transit asset management. That would be things like fueling for buses, other storage for buses, things that with our big transit assets that sometimes if we can partner, especially in Canyon County, which is where these funds are available, we might stretch them further for everyone. Storage, we're lacking storage. There might be a partner who has some that we could partner on. And then maintenance of our buses. Sometimes it makes sense. In this case, it might be that we would partner with our contract partner, Metro Community Services, to help them maintain their buses, for instance, more efficiently. So those are the examples that we've thought of, how we might use these. Others may come up, but as you'll see on the next slide, go ahead, Jason, you'll always get a chance to look at that. So the criteria under which these funds would be used is that they must be formula funds that are nearing expiration. That happens in two ways. It's formula funds that we've not written a grant for, and they're still sitting there, and they're nearing, some of our funds have an expiration year. They're nearing that expiration year. They might be funds within an existing grant that we're not going to use for some reason. Either the project came in less than we expected, or the project was changed in some way. Those are called lapsing funds, but again, they're nearing expiration. We would be able to use those. FTA typically allows us to write an amendment to that contract to change what we're proposing spending it on. And that whatever the project is has to meet the criteria and limitations of whatever that FTA funding requirement is. So we would typically use either 5339 or 5307 funds for this. There's very stringent FTA regulations around how to use those funds, so it would have to meet those limitations. And then we may use those funds when the project meets the criteria. The funds are at risk of expiring or lapsing. It assists a member or a partner with projects that further public transportation in our service area. And as always, after we determine a project, it would come for approval by the board or executive board or CEO as required. And that means if it's less than $150,000, it would come to me for approval. More than that, it would either be the executive board or the board. Some of these will not be a full AFE, and they may be already in the budget. On those, we've determined that we'll bring them to you for approval by writing a memo of how we would use it and what we intend to use it for and what the budget will be, and asking for your acceptance of that memo. Because we don't have a process otherwise to ask for your approval. And we wanted to ensure that we had one. So we've already identified what that would be. If there's some that come to me, I will always include them in my memo update to you so that you'll know what they are. Next. Any discussion on this item? And if not, we have a resolution ready.
Madam Chair, Elaine, this is Jeff Lynn with CWI. How much funds are available that are expiring?
I don't know that I can give you a good accounting of that right now. I do know that we have close to $10 million in funds in Canyon County that have not been spent. Some of those are expiring. My understanding is that right now we're at about 600,000 that are close to expiring.
And do they expire end of your fiscal or sooner?
End of this fiscal year in one case, and next year in the other.
Okay, thank you.
Further question? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Elaine, this seems to be kind of a mini balancing program that was Compass manages with the surface transportation dollars. I guess the one suggestion, like you said, you'd have a process, but it might be good to, we don't have a RTAC or something equivalent, but to really kind of train the staff and the agencies to look for those opportunities. I don't know, and also there would be a kind of a standard calendar every year in which you would know what's lapsing. And my suggestion is kind of maybe mirror that process that people are familiar with.
And you're right, this doesn't have a procedure with it. This is just the policy, and we intend to develop a procedure by how we'll implement it. And that would include letting people know that they're available when they are and what ones are available.
Yes, my question is, are these funds, do we know these funds are in jeopardy, or are they still available?
These are formula funds so they're not in jeopardy. They're already awarded, and these are not the funds that have been questioned.
All right. I'll take a motion. It's up on the screen.
I would move that we approve and adopt the expiring funds policy of 4.02.01, approving resolution VBD 5-.
Second.
Give a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. We've got one final action item before we head into info items, and that is a request to delegate authority to the executive board for fare collection replacement.
Madam Chair, members of the board. Good afternoon. My name is Brad Albaro. I'm the IT director here at VRT. Today, we're going to talk about the fare collection replacement. This is an action. Let me see where you're at. This is an action item which can be found on page 168 through 170 in your packet. Following the presentation, the VRT directors asked to delegate authority to the Board of Executives for approval of resolution VBD 25-019. Just a little background. VRT has utilized the GenFare collection system for over 10 years. In December 23, VRT's GenFare box and infrastructure reached the end of life for technical support and replacement parts. Current software and devices are outdated and limits the different types of fare collections. There are new technologies and digital payment options available. Next. VRT applied for a competitive attain grant for funds to procure all new replacements of VRT's complete fare collection system. This information was presented to the board in the fall of 2024, notifying the board of actions taken for that grant request. This grant request was not awarded in December 2024. If the grant had been awarded, VRT would have been able to move forward with the RFP using the vendor named in the grant. Next steps. VRT has identified sufficient funding to move forward without the competitive grant. As a result of not successfully getting the grant award, VRT has been preparing a request for proposal to procure these products and services for the enterprise fare collection system and intend to post the RFP in April 2025 with intention to award the successful applicant before the next board meeting. And then next, in summary, the new fare collection system will accommodate all current and future needs. All systems comply with VRT's single integrated applications and hands-free integrations. These new solutions incorporate the functionality of mobile payment, hands-free processing while accepting cash deposits, credit cards, mobile payment, and touchless payment, all in one system. The fare collection system will consolidate multiple fare collection systems and several fare processing procedure applications. Furthermore, a complete mobile application and marketing is part of this new system with open architecture. And then with that, stand for
Just a
questions.
couple
you.
of quick notes on that as well. It's important that we get a new system with open architecture. Our system right now is proprietary, and so it's difficult for us to integrate things into it when they come up. So we're excited about the open architecture, and then of course excited about the ability to accept any kind of fare collection. And to your point, Mayor Kling, on the student ID verification, it's possible this new collection system will allow us to put an RFID sticker on their existing student card for use rather than having to issue a new card. So we're looking for all of that. And the request today is to move forward with this and allow the executive board to make the decision so that we can move forward in time for the buses that are under production right now with Gillig and not have to start those with old fare collection.
Any questions?
I do. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you.
Just do. So what did is this currently in the budget? And what did we budget for this? And then do you have an RFP committee that is going to be reviewing the RFPs that come in?
So right now we have 3 different items in the budget that will consolidate for this. One of them is in the one of the competitive grants we received earlier. One of them was in last year's budget for this, and one was a carryover item in last year's budget. We're writing the RFP in such a way that it has alternatives so that we can price it for what we can afford in the budget and not go over.
And then do you have a RFP committee that, who reviews your RFPs when they come in?
So we always put together an internal committee that includes at least one board member typically for this size of a procurement and go through a process.
Thank you. Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you. Thank you for answering, because that was one of my questions. But the other question was, is the total, what we were talking about before, the reduced fare verification process, is that going to dovetail with what we were talking about here?
Could, now that we've had that presentation, we can look at including it in this.
Anything further? Okay, I will take a motion.
We delegate the authority to the Board of Executive Board to approve resolution PPD 5019.
Second.
We have a motion, a second discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Guys have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we've got information item on the closure and construction at the Main Street Station. Stephen, are you presenting, or was this an info item with the memo? Does anybody have any questions?
Just know that Main Street Station is going to be closed for some months while we start the process of putting the on-route electrification.
And then also, Stephen, you've got Canyon County Transit Day. Okay, sounds like Elaine would like to talk about this.
Good afternoon, members of the board, Madam Chair. So again, no presentation here, but just speaking to the memo, I think it is worthwhile, though, that we talk about Canyon County Transit Day. So in your packet, this is page 170, beginning on page 175. Thought I was sharing my screen.
Yep, you are.
Okay. We will be holding a Canyon County Transit Day on May 6th. The purpose of this is to respond to information requests from the city of Nampa as they've been putting together their budget workshop. They asked us to look at a couple of different funding scenarios, and in those funding scenarios, identify what the impact would be to the general public. In order to collect that information, we will be holding, as I mentioned, a transit day on May 6th, where we'll have both a public hearing, not a public hearing, but an open house, and a day that we invite stakeholders and members of the community to come and share their experience. So we'll be reaching out to various service providers, having them come and share what transit does for them. We'll be leaning on a lot of the work that we've done in Canyon County over the years, including, I think we called it Connected Canyon County a couple of years ago, looking to leverage some of the relationships we have with Nampa and Caldwell for the Healthy Nampa Initiative, and other areas where we know the transportation has come up as an important concern for the community. Again, the point of this is for us to look at what the impact would be of 4 different funding scenarios, and this will help inform the Nampa budget workshop, which is scheduled for May 15th. And those 4 scenarios, including existing or continuing existing service in, oh, perfect, thank you. Continuing existing service in Nampa, reducing that service. We don't have a specific amount there, but we will have a scenario that reduces service according to historical contribution levels in the city of Nampa, as well as eliminating general public transit services within the city of Nampa. And then finally, they're also interested in looking at an expanded service network. So those 4 different networks or 4 different scenarios will be engaging the public on to get some public feedback, collecting that information, and then sharing it with it. It's targeted to be shared with the Nampa City Council in their budget workshop. Obviously, well, maybe it's not obvious, so I'll point it out that any individual jurisdiction changes can have impacts on the adjacent or other neighbors. So this would have impacts on all of the inter-county routes. So that's the 40, the 42, and not so much the 45, but the 40 and 42 for sure. And it would also have impacts on the Route 150, which also serves Caldwell and Canyon County. So our effort would be to provide information to the public about what that could look like. And then we know that that has impacts on others in the room, including, as I mentioned, Caldwell, Canyon County, Ada County, City of Meridian, and Boise all have funding shares in those services. So we just want to make sure that you're aware of this, encourage people to come. We want to encourage people to come and participate. We will also be writing transit services those days and doing a direct solicitation of the public, continuing our direct solicitation of the public on getting feedback as to what these changes, how these changes could impact their lives.
Madam Chair, just a little addition here. Since I've been here, I've been looking for a way to ensure that members of the public and service agencies and business groups that benefit from transit have an opportunity to let their decision makers know before decisions are made about the impacts of possible changes in that system. So this is with the city of Boise, for instance, we have an agreement that they actually hold a public hearing prior to their budget discussions that help inform those discussions. We don't have that agreement with anyone else. And so this is an opportunity, we think, to begin building that kind of a process in other places. So while this is aimed at the input we got from the City of Nampa City Council, as we began to talk about budget this year, it clearly will implicate the city of Caldwell and Canyon County as well. And then on those inter-county routes, it does implicate Meridian and Boise. So we think it's vitally important that those decisions get made after some public input and not before we get that. As we learned last year, when decisions are made before there's any public input, we're still required to go get that public input because that's one of the FTA requirements if we're going to change services. And so we were able to do that, but it wasn't able to impact the decision makers because they didn't have it before the decision was made. So I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but it's the way that we've devised this year to at least begin this process. And I'd encourage all of you to participate, especially those of you in Canyon County, you or your staff. And also if you have groups, business groups or service groups or individuals that you think should know about it and would like to participate, please let us know who those are so we can reach out to them.
Chair?
Yes.
So I just want to say thank you to Stephen. It has been, this has been a hard process. You guys have done a really good job, worked closely with our staff. I think we all know that there has been a significant impact with House Bill 389. Hate to bring it up again, but the reality is it's a big impact. In Canyon County, we're also facing an issue with animal shelters. And I know Caldwell is probably going to be dealing with that same huge budgetary increase. So budgets are tight. However, in transportation, of public transportation in this season, it is not an easy transition into a very car-centric area. However, like today, if we were just to stop and say, okay, we're throw our hands up, we're not going to do it, that's going to be a huge step back. So we've got to figure out how to do it. And we in the city of Napa are trying to work closely with staff and Elaine to say, how do we do this? How do we make it work and not have a significantly negative impact on those that use public transportation? Lance, you've been an inspiration and a great advocate as you have shared how important public transportation was to you. I wish our city council, they need to hear that story. Maybe we could get you to write a letter and put in our packet. I'm just thinking about that because it was important to you in your education. And I remember all, the difference it made for you getting from Caldwell to Boise State. Is that correct during your educational years?
Correct, yeah. And I'm sure that there are a number of Boise State students who do the same thing now.
Well, it's important. And so if we lose our public transportation opportunity, it is significantly important to the entire Treasure Valley. And so we're just trying to figure it out. But one thing that we've noted is that we can have a public hearing or we can have them come to city council. And as we experienced last time, they don't even have a way home, right? I think, Elaine, you drove them home. Many of the people that were there testifying. So this is not easy, but it's very, very important. And so it's taking time. I just want to say thank you, not meaning to extend our meeting because I've talked a lot today, but thank you so much for your work. I wish there were an easy answer to this. It's all about funding and trying to figure out how to efficiently fund a service, be efficient with the service and then effectively fund it for its sustainability. Thank you for your work.
Madam Chair, I think it's a real opportunity at Transit Day is to maybe get some video testimonials. I mean, a letter would be great, but I think a little video that you could share with your governing board and others, I think that would have lasting value to VRT.
I think that's on the list. Jason has a whole list of things we're going to generate from this. If it's not, it will be now.
I think this is exciting to be having this. This is the first time, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you. Right, the other items are reports in your packet. We do have an executive session. And so I will take a motion to move into executive session. And then I think something happens online for everybody that's supposed to move in.
Yes, Paula will handle that, I think.
Can we keep it simple or do we have to, I know like it's.
I just ask that you cite code 74206 A through J.
We're good. So motion to go into
So
executive
moved.
session as described.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is this a roll call vote?
Yes, I think it is. Is it?
We don't usually? Okay,
Okay.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Right, all of you online, you'll be blipped into a new room. We are moving into an executive session here in the room. So staff is clearing out and so would kindly request nods without action being taken that the board agrees that the executive board will hear this from Elaine in our next scheduled meeting. If you have questions of Elaine outside of the meeting, you are more than welcome to give her a call, set up a time to meet with her. She'll walk you through. Otherwise, we'll expect a presentation at the next executive board meeting. Right. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, we have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.